A hijacked Indian airliner sits on the ground in the United Arab Emirates. The Christmas spirit rallies the youngest survivors in flood-ravaged Venezuela. And in Rome, tens of thousands gather in St. Peter's Square this Christmas Eve. From CNN in Washington, this is Worldview. I'm Gene Randall. Judy Woodruff and Bernard Shaw are both off. A commandeered Indian airliner is on the ground at a military base in the United Arab Emirates, where the hijackers are said to be offering to release the women, children, and wounded on board. Reporter Vicky White is on the telephone in Dubai. Vicky, are these full-scale negotiations going on?
Yes, negotiations are currently underway. We've got very senior officials here negotiating with the hijackers. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, the Minister of Defense, has been down along with senior officials to discuss what will happen next with the hijackers.
Vicky, do we know about the status of the passengers? We heard reports earlier that some had been killed and that some are wounded.
There are reports, but none of them are confirmed. We've actually asked the officials. They say none are confirmed as yet. The only contact we have with the hijackers is via radio transmission. No one from the ground has been on the plane as yet.
So these talks are going on by two-way radio, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Vicky White reporting to us.
At the moment.
Go ahead, Vicky.
Okay, the hijackers at the moment are demanding water, food, and refueling. Refueling is currently underway, and they're also talking about releasing some of the hostages.
They're talking about releasing the women and the children and the wounded. How long have they been on the ground there?
They've been on the ground now for about a couple of hours, I would say.
And if you can, just describe the atmosphere there. I'm sure it is tinged with tension.
It is, but it's very much under control at the moment. The aircraft has been circling on the tarmac, where at the moment 700 meters from the aircraft. It's stationary at the moment. Up until now, it has been circling from point to point. We understand it's stationary at the moment as it refuels. There are also food vans that have been brought in. There's food at the moment at the location, and I assume they're waiting for it to go on board any moment.
And Vicky, finally, is it your understanding these negotiations are being conducted with officials of the UAE, or are there Indian officials in voice contact with the hijackers as well?
As far as I understand, the UAE are in contact with both Indian officials and the hijackers, but at the moment the negotiations are being held by the UAE government.
Vicky White reporting to us from Dubai. Thanks very much for the update. More than 180 passengers and crew are on board the jet, which began its journey with what should have been a routine one-hour flight from Kathmandu, Nepal to New Delhi, India. But hijackers armed with grenades and automatic weapons seized the plane. What followed was a zigzag journey across the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East as the air pirates looked for fuel, food, and a place to land. The plane put down briefly in Amritsar, India, and Lahore, Pakistan. Afghanistan refused it permission to land. Back in New Delhi, relatives of the passengers wait for news. The hijackers reportedly told the pilot they have killed 4 people. After refueling in Lahore, the plane headed to the Persian Gulf, eventually landing in the UAE, where the crisis continues at this hour. The concern that terrorists may target Americans at home and abroad has authorities on alert this holiday season. CNN's Kelly Wallace has a report for us from the White House. Kelly?
Well, Gene, White House officials say they are watching that hijacking of the Indian airliner as closely as they can. They are also monitoring developments on the terrorism front. The latest, Canadian authorities have issued an arrest warrant and have started a nationwide manhunt for 32-year-old Abdelmajid Dahoumane. He's wanted for charges including making or possessing explosive substances. According to court documents, investigators believe he is connected to another Algerian, Ahmed Rassam, the man who was arrested 10 days ago for allegedly trying to smuggle bomb-making materials into the United States. Rassam is also wanted in Canada for explosive charges. Now, investigators believe the 2 men were staying at a Vancouver motel in the weeks before Rassam headed to the United States. Last night, investigators searched Dahoumane's Montreal apartment, but no explosives were found. Law enforcement officials tell CNN there are no indications that Dahoumane may have crossed into the U.S. from Canada. One law enforcement official also says that federal officials are consulting with the mayors and the U.S. attorneys of some of America's leading cities. But U.S. officials across the board continue to stress that so far there is no credible information about specific terrorist threats on American soil.
The investigators are following a number of leads. I think they've been very forthright in keeping the American public informed. But while they follow the leads, where we are is that there's no specific credible threat against a particular target.
In another case, an Algerian man and a Canadian woman were arrested at Vermont's border with Canada. In a court hearing yesterday, federal prosecutors say they believe the woman may be tied to a terrorist group, the Algerian Islamic League. So far, investigators have not tied those Vermont arrests with the case of Ahmed Rassam. Gene?
Kelly Wallace at the White House. Thank you, Kelly.